What if there was a way for your thoughts, your words, to be sent into the future and to be understood and appreciated by someone anywhere on the planet? Would that not make us, in a way, immortal and give us the power to communicate across time and space? When we were inquisitive children curled up under the blankets, flashlight in hand, reading our favorite story, were we not actually inviting the author of that story into our innermost space to share their thoughts, their stories with us in their words? I'm Bella St. John. Join us as we venture together to explore the history of those words in A Novel Idea.
Well, I've been looking forward to, I look forward to every one of my interviews, but I've been looking forward to this one because I haven't seen this man we worked it out. It's actually a couple of years. It was when I was in Iceland that we last got together. Coach Rick Kolster, welcome.
Good morning, and how are you, Bella, my dear friend?
Always wonderful. Thank you. So today we're going to dive into your author journey, because most of your life is spent within the coaching and the personal professional development arena. Sure. You've also written some books, and so that's what we're going to look at today. But first of all, let's go back to the very beginning. Now, you currently live down the bottom part of America, but you were born up the top part.
Yes, I was born in New Jersey, of all places, northern New Jersey, where we tend to think of, if you have ever seen television, Tony Soprano and his crew.
And the home of Thomas Edison.
Oh, that too. That little tidbit as well. The light bulb thing.
Yeah, and David Cassidy. But I think Thomas Edison ranks a little bit further up the list. So what was it like growing up there? What were your influences? What did you do? What was your early life like?
Oh, early life was interesting. My dad was a blue-collar worker. Mom was a stay-at-home mom and a seamstress. 4 kids in the family. I'm the oldest of 4. And it was what you would think of, that typical neighborhood, suburban, played outside, played what we call stickball. We played in the streets. We ran. It was what we like to see today, or we don't really see anymore today, unfortunately, is Mom would say, go play and come home when the street lights come on.
Exactly. Come home before
where we went.
Mm-hmm.
It was a safe environment. We had fun and we played, and we did kid stuff. We were playing in the woods, and we were riding our bikes, and we were chasing each other and doing things. We probably shouldn't have done some of them, but nothing that was destructive. It was a good, solid, we all knew each other. Parents were able to discipline us if we did something wrong. The neighbors would grab me by my ear and bring me home to my dad and mom. Say, this is what Rick has been doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was that great environment, and we all knew each other. We were close. We were friends. We were family. And, the fun part is today, it even stays that way because of social media. We're able to reconnect over and over again. And I reconnected with my across the street neighbor, who I probably terrorized him and his kids a little bit as a teenager. I was a little rambunctious, let's say. And
really?
I thought he was the meanest, baddest, toughest guy on the face of the planet. And now he is the kindest. Obviously, he's my parents' age. But he's the kindest, gentlest man, and just speaks kindness and love and joy into the world today. It's not what I thought he was 40 some odd years ago. But life changes us all.
Well, life changes us all, and maybe he was like that 40 years ago, but you didn't necessarily bring out the best in him because of your rambunctious nature, shall we say. We'll just leave that one there.
Maybe there's some wisdom there, too.
Maybe. So possibly. You always wanted to be an entrepreneur when you were growing up.
It just seemed to be. My mom worked as a seamstress. So not a real big entrepreneurial job, helped out, made my sister's clothes, tried to make me clothes. And, at about 13, 14, maybe a little bit younger, I started cutting lawns for the neighbors, $2, $1.50, $2. And I would cut lawns. And in the wintertime, it snowed, obviously. And I would go shovel sidewalks for the neighbors for $1, shovel the old lady's sidewalk. And always had a hustle going on, I would say. I always was finding something because I always wanted to do things. And my parents didn't have any money. Dad was raising 4 kids on a blue-collar salary, on not very much. He actually dug the holes for telephone poles. He was
Wow.
he was out digging holes in the middle of the ground to put telephone poles in.
Yeah.
And I was always hustling. At 14, my mom came to me. She says, "You're really expensive. You eat a lot." Because I'm kind of a big guy. I was growing up, I was over 6 foot tall. I was doing some athletics, playing basketball and football. Just you're really expensive to keep up. So, and you're growing too doggone fast. So if you could help us out and either buy your clothes or buy your food, that would be really nice. So we're going to ask you to go to work. And at the time, my mom was working at, and you may or may not be familiar with the sewing machine company, Singer.
Yes.
Singer, so she was as a seamstress. She got a part-time gig at the Singer sewing machine shop, teaching ladies how to sew. And next door was a little children's clothing store. And Jerry and Abe, two of my first experience with entrepreneurs. And they said, "Here, go sit in the basement and put the clothing tags on children's clothing." So I know everything about and nothing about everything from infant to 6T clothing. And I just learned how to do retail without doing it. I learned the back end of retail, the dirty side of it, the stocking side, the ordering side. And they were great guys. They really taught me a lot. And a lot of life lessons too. There's some good in there too and some bad in there. Some of it will remain unspoken, but it's still, I said, what an entrepreneur. And then I went on to work for I spent 3 years there, 14 through almost 17. And during my summer before my senior year in high school, I met a man who's still become one of my best friends in this world. And that's a long time ago, if you know how really old I am. And I went to work in a delicatessen, making what we call Subway sandwiches, the big sub sandwiches, the original. For anyone who has that's here in the States that knows Jersey Mike's. Jersey Mike's is a big sandwich shop, and it's that New Jersey style, call them submarine sandwiches. I made those and pizza and learned to do that and learned how cool entrepreneurs are. And I was going to college at the time, and we stayed together. And then when I got out of college, when I left college, finished up, and I went back to him. I said, "Let's buy a pub." At 22, I bought a pub.
Congratulations.
Fresh out of college. I had no idea what I was doing. I was dumber than a box of rocks. But I didn't know what I didn't know, so nothing scared me. So we jumped in head first, and we turned it into one of the busier bars in my hometown. And as you can imagine, when you're 22 and you open a pub in your hometown, all of a sudden, people who you hadn't seen since your high school days become your friends.
Funny that. It's like winning the lottery. It's like all of these people, oh, yes, I'm your friend. Remember me?
Come back and I'll get me a free drink, or food or whatever. So that was an interesting, and I've just pretty much stayed working for entrepreneurs. Ultimately moved in and I didn't have to, but I decided to go into the corporate world to learn that side of business, and spent 15 years in that corporate structured world, learned it. And then in 2003, decided I had enough, left and started my consulting practice, Peak Performance Group. And here I am as Coach Rick. Is that 20 years later almost?
Just a wee little bit later. But yeah. So that was 2003, but then in 2009, that's when the books start.
Yes, I had the itch, and it was one of those. I was in a mastermind group, and we decided to say, you know what, we all have these great thoughts. We've been in a mastermind group, and know what mastermind groups can do for you. and the value of them. And as a group, we'd been in the group about 2 years. And we said, you know what? Why don't we collaborate and write a book on becoming an entrepreneur? Because we all may be an expert in something, but we may not be expert in selling what we do. Well, whether you could be an accountant, whether you could be an engineer, something technical that you have this wonderful, wonderful skill set, but if you can't sell it, you're probably going to go hungry. And we were all experts in the coaching field. It was a coaching mastermind, and we knew how to sell our practices. So we collaborated on how to sell, and we took a take on that old, whatever for dummies books that they make.
Mm-hmm.
And we decided we're tired of being called dummies. So we just said, we're going to be geniuses, because most people are really good at something. They're experts. They are subject matter experts, but they just may not know how to do one or two things. That's pretty normal. I don't know much about accounting, but I do know how to sell. So we called it Selling for Geniuses, for those geniuses that are out there that really have a skill set that they can use, but they just may not know about this. So we're going to teach you geniuses how to do this skill set. And we wrote a book on, and it's everything from how to network, how to track your selling, how to approach, how to talk to people, how to put together presentations, how to get your mind right when you have to sell, and all the things that it takes to really open and close a deal.
And so talk to us about the collaborative process then as an author on that book, because it's different from your next book, for instance, that you went and you wrote on your own. So first of all, let's look at the collaborative process. What was that like from a practical standpoint?
From a practical standpoint, collaboration, it was good. There was a lot of accountability. The accountability part was very strong because we met every week. We had an hour every week, and we would meet and we would talk. And how are you doing? I'm struggling here. I'm stuck here. And things like writer's block. And sometimes you just get it. You just nothing's coming to me. But what it was is we said, okay, what part of this journey, selling journey, would you like to talk about? So that was the cool collaborative part. Each one of us had even a tighter niche in the selling arena. I love the mindset piece. So I talked about, how do you close out? How do you have the right mindset when you walk into a presentation? Somebody was very, very technical and analytics. So they talked about the numbers of selling. So that was kind of the fun part that we did, because we all took what we were good at, even down on a really micro level. Not from a macro level of selling, because selling is a broad stroke. But we went down to micro levels and broke it down. And we just did what was in our hearts and what was in our passions. And the accountability part was, I think, the most powerful piece of it, because it kept us on track. And we were able to edit each other's and clean up words and straighten things. Editing is probably one of the most tedious things that you can do. And I'm not a very good at tedious things myself. I am a very broad stroke, high level. Hey, if the word is spelled wrong, so be it. You know what I mean. So if I said buy as in B-Y-E and I spelled it B-U-Y, you know what I mean. Come on. Just because I spelled it wrong doesn't make a difference, or a B-Y. And
any editors watching this or listening to this podcast are cringing about now.
They're cringing. And I will give you a little tidbit on my second book, because I write how I speak. And English, while English is my first language, I just don't speak it. It's not what would we call it? The Queen's English, let's say. I use New Jersey English and Texan now that I've been in Texas for so long. And I write how I speak. And my editors for my second book, she said, you can't write that. I said, yes, I can. She said,
yes.
No, it doesn't make sense. Yes, it does make sense. No, it's not a sentence. It is in my world. Yes. So we kept it because it's my book.
Yeah,
but
it's
they
really
gave me the
important
pitch.
for writers to have their voice.
Mhm.
You know, I one of the things that I coach, well, not so much now, but have coached a lot of authors on, is make sure that when somebody picks up your book and starts reading, they can hear your
Mhm.
voice in
Mhm.
your words. Otherwise, what's the point?
And that's, I think, is what has made my second book even more successful. Was it isn't completely in my voice. And when I say some of the Rickisms, we like to call them Rickisms. The
Yes,
Rickisms, they go, I never heard anybody say that before, but I can see Coach Rick saying that
yes,
and speaking to that because that's who I am. And they
yes.
get that, and they go, oh, I know what he meant. He may
Mm,
not have said it in, like I say, the Queen's English, but it was in a manner that comes from his heart. And I think that's
exactly.
where writers really, really miss the boat sometimes, or nail it and go one side or the other. Either you hit it or you miss it, depending upon is it coming from your heart or not.
Mm. And so the process of you writing that second book, so it was approximately how long from, oh, I'm going to write this book. So it was called Roll Up Your Sleeves and Get to Work. So the process from this is the book that I want to write through to holding it in your hand was around about how long, and what were some of the key milestones along the way?
The interesting part was I began, and on my coaching journey, because I, have had a number of coaches in my career, but I had one who really just got me, so to speak, got who Rick was. And I was working through some ups and downs as we do in our careers. About midway through, somewhere around the end 2000, right after we did Selling for Geniuses, I was struggling with some things. And I hired a coach and took me through that. And we came up with a couple of things. Who is Rick and what does he do? He gets stuff done. He helps people get things done, and he rolls up his damn sleeves and gets to work. We went, that's it.
The
So
book title.
that's it. That's who I am. So as I began writing and thinking, I said, you know what? Maybe there's a book here. Maybe there's something here that I can share with my philosophy, my life, how I've gotten things, some of my journey. And that's what it became. It came what I speak about, who I am, and my journey, and some of the challenges I faced, and some of the successes I've had. And it was roll up your sleeves and get to work. And that's where it came. So it took almost 4 years and it wasn't 100%. I wasn't writing 100, every day with intention.
No, but the process was around about 4 years from
To take the
here's my idea
components.
to,
Once I decided, okay, book, we're going to do this. For me, it was about a year because I had a full-time practice that I was working. This was another piece of it. And it took about a year once I really said, okay, let's write it. Because I had been compiling components of this over that. And even my next book, the one that's percolating, as they say, it's
yes.
back there. It's been percolating for probably 15 years. And it's sitting right there. And I'm not sure what I want to do with it. Most of the components are there. I just have to fill the bones are there. I haven't put the meat on the bones, let's say.
Mhm.
And I know you kind of, that's a Rickism.
Yeah,
And but you know what I mean.
I
I
know
have to fill it
exactly
out and
what you mean.
flesh this out
Mm,
to make it a book. Otherwise, it's a pamphlet of 10 pages
yes,
with the structure and the outline. So
yes.
now to fill it up, fill stories, do all the things you do, and that I think is the most fun part because you get to go back and look at your life, and you get to go, where and how did I learn how to do what I'm doing? Where what I'm trying to say, the point I'm trying to make, and how do I support it? Because you don't have support behind it from life experience. I don't believe that you can be genuine and
Mm,
congruent.
mm.
Those are
And
big
so
words.
you like that word? I like that word. That's a very good word. And so what about any authors or writers that have influenced you that you may have read growing up, or
It's
any
really interesting.
influences?
Reading was one of those hobbies. My dad really turned me on to reading all the time. And I remember every payday, he would come home and he had these little paperback books that he would read. And it was a military version, because I really like the military genre and the history genre, but it was about, this ninja assassin, and he would bring me home, and I had 100 of these books. Now, they were tiny little thin paperbacks. They probably cost him less than $1 at the time to buy, and he would read them and hand them to me, and I'd read them. Oh, this guy's really good. And I would wait for the next one for next week, and I would read it, and I would read it, and that kind of spurred me onto reading. And as I began to read and I began to grow in my career, I became, and if anybody remembers the Tom Cruise movie Cocktail, where he always had a self-help book under the desk. Because I was in the restaurant business. Remember, I was in the restaurant business when I got out in the bar business. I was always the guy that was reading that book. Or I would sit out and I'd read war novels. W.E.B. Griffin wrote books about our military, about the Army, the Marines, the Philadelphia Police Force. He wrote all about people who serve, and just long series of books. And I started with read those, and I would find that. So W.E.B. Griffin was one. Then I began to get into more self-help. John Maxwell was an amazing writer, prolific. And I said, oh, what about this? And then, our friend Tony Robbins, Tony his books started coming back out in the 80s, and his programs, and I would listen, and I would read, and I would listen, and I would read. And I just became enthralled with self-help. And but then you can name all the greats, the Jim Rohns of the world, the Zig Ziglars of the world, all their books. I just started getting Brian Tracy, who I have actually had the pleasure of meeting and talking with. Brian Tracy. When you meet one of your heroes, it's really, really exciting. And I'd like to say we met at a conference, National Speakers Association conference, and I actually followed him, or he followed me on stage, I should say, because I was working as a stagehand. I took his chair and put it out before his keynote. So he followed me back on stage afterwards.
I was going to say, if you followed Brian Tracy, I mean, it's like, how on earth does one follow Brian Tracy?
Exactly. I went out and took the chair and put it back in the back from where his keynote.
Slight qualification, yes.
But that's what it was. I just started learning to read, and I love to read. And if you were to see my real office, as we know, we look at a background to my office, it's a library. There's probably 8 bookshelves in here full of books.
Yes.
And sometimes my wife she said to me not too long ago, I said, I'm running out of room. She goes, well, why don't you sell some of your books? Sacrilege.
No.
How dare you?
No. I travel the world with several books, and a number of them were published in the 1800s.
Mm-hmm. And that's the thing is how do we continue to read and learn, finding new things all the time. And I love that. You would see my back desk, my credenza behind me is stacked with 3, 4, 5 books right now that are in the queue to be read.
And why do you think it is important for an author or a want-to-be, soon-to-be author to read?
It expands your vocabulary. It allows you to communicate more effectively because you're learning different ways that people communicate. You learn words you probably never would use, that you would never learn in school or use, because we all speak probably 200 words that we use on a consistent basis. In a book, and you look at it, it could be anything from the classics, the Shakespeare's, all the way up to today's writers. Jordan Peterson is one of my favorites to listen to in some of his writings as well. He's very cutting edge, but the words that they use, they expand your vocabulary. It makes you more articulate. It allows you to communicate more effectively. And I think that's part of what has allowed me as now a speaker to be able to communicate with my audiences, because I know the use of words and the power of words. Words are currency. Words are like money in the bank, because that'll allow you to get what you need done.
Yes. So, and I completely concur. So 5 final questions to wrap up. Short, sharp answers. What is the most important lesson you have learned thus far in your author journey?
You want a short answer for that? What
Yeah.
I've learned is put your head down and speak from your heart. Short and sweet. Speak
Love
from
it.
the heart when you want to share your message.
Perfect. If you were to describe yourself in 3 words, what would they be?
Faith, love, and health.
If you could invite 5 authors, living or dead, for dinner, who would they be and why?
You did this to me on purpose.
I did.
Okay. So number 1 would be Webb Griffin, because he was transformational in me wanting to read. Like I mentioned, John Maxwell. Another authorette that we may or may not know is Bob Beaudine. And Bob has written 2 books. One is called Two Chairs, and the other one is called The Power of Who. And I'd like to see Bob, who's an incredible man of faith, and hear his story of faith and success and how he's used networking to build his business and share his faith. Oh, let's see. Who else? Who am I reading? Can I cheat for a second?
Living or dead, by all means.
Living or dead. I just picked up a book by a gentleman named Damon West, and he wrote a book called The Coffee Bean, and his second book was The Locker Room. He is and is a former athlete, went to jail, came out, redeemed himself with the book The Coffee Bean. And the concept of the coffee bean is coffee bean by itself, when it's put in hot water, creates something different. Something marvelous, something majestic, if you're a coffee nut like I am. So, and the coffee bean. So I would love to see and just kind of get his perspective on his transformation, and then how he's done. And he's got 2 other books that are out as well that talk about his journey, and just see what it took to make that happen. Final author. Let's see, who's the final author? I've got so many in my head that I'm just, I'd probably go with one of the classics. I'd go with Sir William Shakespeare. Just
Why?
to get his perspective on, from a generational perspective, to get his perspective on love and some of the things he wrote about. I mean, you talk about Othello, we talk about, just the books that he wrote is just, how did you come up with that? And, like Henry V, one of my favorite books, and probably one of the best soliloquies that were given on St. Crispin's Day. Here we are, before they go in battle. I mean, just think about that. And then how people today have taken his work, the concept, and then added it and written their own from there. But conceptually, he actually established a foundation for so many different modern day movies and books.
Yes. Perfect. What is the best piece of advice that you could give to somebody who wants to be but is not yet an author?
Read, and write every day. Just get a journal. It doesn't matter what you're journaling about, but journal your journey, journal your life, journal your heartaches, journal your joys, journal what you're afraid of. Out of that will come your heart and your passion. And when you write from your heart. Obviously, research. You want to find out, make sure you're giving truthful, but write from your heart, whether it's fiction or whether it's nonfiction. I'm more of a nonfiction writer. Here's the facts. Here's what it is. Here's what you need to do. Here's what I believe. And, fiction, I don't know if that's a genre I could actually write. I probably could, but I make up lots of really good stories. But my passion is that nonfiction, to say here's what I learned. Here's how I can share my knowledge. Here's how I can help you. So there you go.
Excellent. Last question. As an author, what do you hope is your legacy that you leave the world?
Oh, dang. Make these hard ones. My legacy is just want to be simple. I want to be known as one thing, a good man. That I left the world better than when I came in. Bottom line. So that when I'm dead and gone, laying there, looking up, they go, that was a good man. And you're going to get me all teary-eyed doing this,
That's
that was
true.
a good man.
You are a good man, sir. And it's been an absolute pleasure having this conversation with you today. Thank you so much.
It is absolutely my honor and privilege to do that. I enjoy our time that we get to talk together. As rare as it is, as occasional as it is, and I love watching your journey and your life. And when you asked if I would come and visit with you and talk, it was first thing, the answer was yes. How long and when?
Patrick Kolster, thank you so much for being part of this author's journey.
Authors, my pleasure. Bella, be blessed.